What would happen if people ruled without philosophers? What if, instead of wise kings, we had only laws? In his final work, The Laws, Plato abandons the ideal of the republic and offers something more grounded, a city governed not by philosopher-kings, but by a strict legal system. Why does he change his mind? And what does this mean for modern society? In this video, we'll explore 5 powerful lessons from The Laws, Plato's most mature and practical work. And maybe, just maybe, we'll start to see politics and legislation in a whole new light. In the Republic, Plato argued that only philosophers were fit to rule. Only those who love wisdom, understand the good, and see beyond the illusions of daily life could lead a society toward virtue and harmony. But in The Laws, something changes. Plato seems to accept that the ideal city is difficult, maybe impossible, to achieve. Philosopher-kings are rare, if they exist at all. So he shifts his focus from ideal leadership to practical governance, a city ruled by law. Here, law becomes the true ruler. It no longer matters who holds office, as long as they follow a well-crafted legal system. The success of the city doesn't depend on the wisdom or virtue of its leaders, but on a consistent and rational framework that guides all citizens. This new vision of society is a form of rule by law. Authority belongs not to individuals, but to the logic and structure of the legal code. It's a radical shift from the utopia of the Republic to the realistic approach of the Laws. Plato doesn't abandon the dream of justice. He simply redefines the path to achieve it. Stability, order, and virtue now rest on the foundation of law, not the character of rulers. Instead of hoping for the rise of perfect leaders, Plato now calls for a system strong enough to function even in their absence. For Plato, law is not just a tool to prevent crime or punish wrongdoers. It is something much deeper, a moral and educational guide designed to shape the soul and lead the citizen toward virtue. In The Laws, law is presented as a teacher. It's not fear of punishment that should control the citizen, but an inner understanding of right and wrong. A good law doesn't merely regulate outward behavior. It seeks to transform the inner world of the individual. Plato proposes that every law should be accompanied by a preface, a reasoning, an explanation, a kind of moral argument. Citizens should not simply obey, they should understand why they obey. This idea is revolutionary. The lawgiver is not just a technician of power, he is a philosopher, an educator, even a kind of psychologist. The goal is not obedience through fear, but the shaping of character. A person who understands the logic behind a law doesn't need coercion. They choose what is right because they recognize it as good. This approach reveals how deeply Plato thinks about society. For a city to function well, it is not enough to have strict rules. It must have citizens who feel the law within themselves, who internalize its ethics, not because it was imposed, but because they see its truth. Law, then, becomes more than a set of commands. It becomes a tool for the cultivation of the soul. And this, perhaps, is one of Plato's most powerful and often forgotten messages. That true justice starts not in courts or parliaments, but in the education of the heart and mind. For Plato, character formation begins with education. And when he speaks of education, he doesn't mean simply the transfer of knowledge, but something much deeper, the conscious cultivation of the soul. In The Laws, he places great emphasis on music, dance, and physical training. Not as entertainment or exercise, but as tools of moral development. Music, in particular, is seen as a force that touches the soul directly. Rhythms and melodies shape character. Poor musical education leads to moral decay. Proper education leads to virtue. Plato insists that from a young age, children must be guided to appreciate what is good and beautiful, not through coercion, but through art. When a child grows up surrounded by rhythms, lyrics, and movements that uplift the soul. They internalize order, harmony, and self-restraint. It's no coincidence that he even suggests laws should regulate the kind of music allowed in a city. To many today, that sounds authoritarian. But for Plato, freedom without education leads to chaos. A society that lets the soul feed on random, lower stimuli cannot produce virtuous citizens. Education, then, is not secondary. It is the core of political organization. If citizens are properly shaped from childhood, there is little need for police or punishment. Their inner rhythm will guide them. Through music and education, Plato envisions a city not governed by fear or force, but by the harmony of the soul aligned with virtue. In the Laws, Plato does not treat religion as a mere social tradition, but as the foundation of morality and legality. For a city to function properly, its citizens must believe that laws are not man-made tricks, but expressions of a higher, divine order. Faith in the gods is not simply about rituals or worship. It is a vital condition for respecting the law. If people believe that justice has a divine origin, then obeying the law takes on a sacred dimension. They don't obey out of fear, but because they feel that violating the law means violating something holy. Plato is deeply concerned about atheism. He sees it as dangerous. The idea that the world is ruled by chance or human whim undermines the very basis of ethical life. If the universe has no divine reason, then nothing truly matters. The city collapses because its citizens no longer believe in any objective right or wrong. That's why, in the Laws, theology becomes a political tool. Education must instill from an early age the belief in a divine justice that governs not just nature, but human life as well. Law, as a reflection of this cosmic order, becomes more than a social contract. It becomes a moral compass linking heaven and earth. This doesn't mean Plato supports blind faith. On the contrary, he wants citizens to embrace a rational faith, to understand that the universe has meaning, purpose, and structure, and that the laws of the city are part of this grand cosmic harmony. In the Laws, Plato places great emphasis on human nature, especially on desire. For him, a city cannot function if its people are slaves to their passions. On the contrary, self-control or inner discipline is the foundation of any stable society. Plato sees the human being as divided. On one side, reason and virtue; on the other, instincts and desires. Desire is not evil in itself, but when it dominates reason, it leads to injustice, chaos, and social collapse. Law, therefore, is not just an external force. It must educate desire, guide it, and temper it. The ideal city is not the one that simply suppresses violence through punishment. It's the one that teaches citizens to desire what is good. The goal is not repression, but the cultivation of inner order. When each person knows when to act, when to hold back, and when to remain silent, then true freedom is born. A freedom rooted not in external permissions, but in inner harmony. Plato views the law as a companion in the journey toward virtue. Not a tyrant, but a mirror. Through discipline and self-awareness, the citizen learns to first govern themselves, and only then can they live peacefully with others. A society full of such individuals doesn't need many laws. It only needs a gentle reminder of what is just, because justice will already be living inside them. If you made it this far, a big bravo to you. It's not easy to stay focused through a philosophical video until the end. That says something about you, that you crave meaning, depth, and real thought. Our channel is still new. We started this journey out of love for books and ideas that have the power to change lives. If you enjoyed this video, a like and a subscribe would mean the world to us. Not just for the numbers, but because it shows us that someone out there is listening. With every interaction, you give us the strength to keep going. You help us grow, reach more people, and bring philosophy, knowledge, and reflection closer to everyone. So if you feel this is worth it, take a small step. A like, a subscribe, even a comment. It's the fuel that keeps this journey alive. Thank you for being here with us. We'll see you in the next video.